Oftentimes when we first meet families in clinic for our first visit, families are very nervous about their child's head shape and they're not clear on what this is. Some families will have heard the name but can't pronounce the name, and so part of our goal for today is to talk a little bit about craniosynostosis and what that is. So first of all, the word cranio, skull, and synostosis, fusion of the skull sutures. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. I think in order to understand craniosynostosis, it's helpful to think a little bit about typical anatomy as well as to review some models of skulls that have different forms of craniosynostosis. So the typical newborn skull looks like this. Children have these skull plates that are separated by sutures. This is the metopic suture. We have 2 coronal sutures, the sagittal suture, and 2 lambdoid sutures in the back. And the sutures all meet together here in the soft spot or the anterior fontanelle. The purpose of these sutures is really to allow the baby's skull to expand as the brain's growing. And the first suture that closes is the metopic suture, and this typically occurs sometime in the first year. The rest of these sutures really stay open until kids are in their late teens or early 20s. So by definition, early closure is any time before the expected time. When babies have premature fusion of a suture, then we typically see very classic skull patterns associated with that. So this is an example of a model that demonstrates premature fusion of the sagittal suture. And in this model, we see that the skull is longer and more narrow back here, indicating closure. The second most common form of synostosis is called coronal synostosis, in which one of the coronal sutures is fused early. Oftentimes children will have a forehead that's retruded on one side, and there'll often be a ridge over here. You can't see this very well in this skull, but oftentimes children will have an eye opening that's bigger on one side than the other. Metopic synostosis is the next most common form of this condition, and this occurs with premature fusion of the metopic suture. And you can see that triangulation of the forehead is very common in this condition. The fourth most common form of craniosynostosis is lambdoid synostosis. And in this condition, what you see is a little bit of flattening often on the side that's affected, but most importantly, oftentimes children will have one ear that's lower than the other, and also a presence of what we call a mastoid bulge, or bulge of the skull in the back. So these are examples of a typical newborn skull shape, as well as the typical shapes associated with the most common forms of single suture craniosynostosis. Craniosynostosis is one of the most common conditions that we treat, and we're very fortunate to have a large craniofacial team who cares for a large number of children with all forms of craniosynostosis. I think it's most reassuring for families to be able to see pictures of children who have gone through this procedure, to talk to families, and then to talk to the team about the kind of care that we provide for children, and to feel reassured that we have treatment plans that are unique and special for your child. So most children with single suture synostosis have one surgery with beautiful correction of the skull and don't require further craniofacial care. For more information about craniosynostosis and the care that we provide at Seattle Children's, watch our other videos in the craniosynostosis series.